What a stunning victory for the opposition. What's the key takeaway for you, and what's been your observation?
Well, I think, firstly, people voted loudly and clearly for change in government. Firstly, this has never happened before, obviously. UMNO Barisan has been in power for 61 years, so I understand some nervousness, some apprehension. But I think where we stand today is that the will of the people will prevail, and I'm fully expecting smooth transition in political leadership in accordance with what the people want. And even as of last night, Pakatan Harapan had promised a public holiday for Thursday and Friday. And the temporary head of government, which is the head of the civil service, actually honored that promise, even though Pakatan Harapan is not actually in office just yet. So one institution is working well, and of course the security forces were also out last night, making sure things will come throughout the country, and they were. It wasn't perfect, but I think, and it will take a bit of time, but I think overall we are going to get smooth political transition, which is great news for the long term.
Was it something you envisioned?
No, I think we were all surprised. I think, looking at various surveys, Merdeka Center, etc., no one really predicted it apart from one or two. So yes, I think most people were surprised. Markets will be a little surprised.
You talked about how you expect it to be a smooth transition. People voted for change. Realistically, what kind of change can be expected?
Well, I think you've got a very interesting combination in terms of the incoming government, because you've got a combination of vast experience as well as new ideas. A lot of energetic young people. So I think it'll be a combination. The PH has a manifesto, and I expect them to try as hard as possible to keep to that manifesto. And it's laid out. And that manifesto, incidentally, also includes the setting up of a consultative council to look at a new way, a new formula for Malaysia.
The financial markets obviously did not anticipate this outcome. In fact, it underestimated the possibility of the opposition coalition winning. So far, we've seen some reaction, a drop, and the ETFs, and we're seeing ringgit forwards also dropping. When markets actually open on Monday, what are you anticipating?
No, I think it's going to be a volatile few days for the financial markets.
Just a couple of days?
Well, it depends how the new government calms the markets down, how quickly the new governments can lay out their agenda, and also who takes the reins, particularly in the economic portfolios. And I think that could go a long way to calming people down. Markets doesn't like uncertainty. Foreign investors don't necessarily have to be in Malaysia, so you'll get a little bit of you get a bit of a bumpy ride. And that's to be expected. And as in when you invest in a new company, in any company, when a new CEO comes in, right, things change, and maybe certain things rise to the surface that you didn't realize. So we'll go through that kind of bumpy phase.
Incoming Prime Minister Mahathir Mohamad has made clear that should he become Prime Minister, he will abolish the 6% GST, which has been crucial for government coffers. He's also talked about greater scrutiny for Chinese investments, and that's caused some kind of nervous reaction from the investment community. How do you see that playing out?
Well, I think withdrawing GST has to be seen as part of an overall equation. Yeah, where is the give in terms of the comeback vis the budget? Perhaps a reduction in some of the development expenditure could also help. Where some OPEX cuts may come in could also help. So I don't think we should just look at removing GST as necessarily a bad thing, right? What are the adjustments on the other side of the equation? And in terms of Chinese investments. I think, even the corporates have been calling for a review of some of these investments to make sure that they are valuable to Malaysia. They are good for Malaysia. And I've also gone public in saying that, we have to look at every investment to make sure what is the value add to Malaysia. So I think a review process is okay. And it'll be a good thing for Malaysia. We need to balance what's short-term and what's long-term. I am fully confident that in the long term, this transition will be good for financial markets with Malaysia, because when you invest in a country, you're always so nervous if it's never seen a political transition. Here, I think Malaysia is going to prove that we can go through political transition smoothly, and maybe financial markets and corporate Malaysia will be more detached from the political sphere, which will be good for Malaysia.
It's a fine balancing act, because Mahathir Mohamad has to cater to 4 opposition parties that working hand in hand. Is there a risk he may fall short of expectations? And what implications are there?
Well, he's made a habit of exceeding expectations. So we'll go with that.
The biggest risk?
I think the biggest risk is short-term versus long-term, right? What he needs to do for the short term, and how markets and the people respond to that versus what's best for Malaysia in the long term.
You've been right in your predictions for the ringgit before in our previous conversations. SEB is now calling for the ringgit at 4 versus the dollar. Any reaction?
I'll go back to my term, bumpy. It's going to be bumpy. I think that's going to be bumpy, and but that's to be expected.
I want to take a look at the longer-term implications. Some of the issues raised during the election are issues like unemployment within the young, which is 3 times the national average, at exceeding 10%. What can the government do? What policies can be implemented by the next government to address this issue?
Well, I expect the next government to look at this holistically, and I think there has to also be a look at our policies going forwards in the context of the 4th Industrial Revolution, right? Our education system, unemployment, etc. And I think this is a great opportunity to relook at everything. And certainly we're going to have fresh ideas from the new bunch of people who are coming in. And, I think we should look forward to it. Smooth political transition, fresh ideas, and long-term, Malaysia will have proven that we go through political transition peacefully, and I think that's going to be very good for us.
Do you see Malaysia being able to compete better with its neighbors, given this democratic movement that we're seeing right now?
Well, it depends what you're talking about. You're talking about from an economic standpoint. I think, a fresh look at things, fresh ideas can be very positive.
What would you like to see implemented first? What would you like to hear from Prime Minister, from Mahathir Mohamad once he's sworn in? What kind of team would you like to see? Because right now, the only clarity that we have are the top 2 positions with, of course, with the idea of having Anwar Ibrahim take over the PMship.
Well, I think we'd like to see a combination of dynamism and experience throughout. And I think how he crafts the economic portfolios will be important. He has a lot of experienced people around him. He's also got a group of very, very smart people around him. So bring the right combination of people to run the economic portfolios. And I think don't rush into things. Take a holistic view of policies and strategies, and calm the markets and move forward from there.
Is there a sense that the past 9 years, under the leadership of Najib Razak, it's tarnished somewhat the reputation of Malaysia and its people?
No, I think the big noisy element was the 1MDB crisis, and I think on hindsight, 1MDB also led to a lot of other things. There was a second and third order effect of 1MDB, and I think given the incongruous treatment of the 1MDB issue at home and abroad, of course that's affected Malaysia's reputation. And this is also, I think the Rakyat has also voted against that. So it's an opportunity then to reset the narrative on that.
What would be the best case resolution to that?
No, I think it's in terms of it's just to give full transparency and to deal with it, as I've been saying in the past.
Your family has had a great part in building the country. As a businessman, as an investor, what's your vision for Malaysia?
No, I think, I've said it at various different forums before. And we want a peaceful, stable, progressive Malaysia with the right, institutional structures. And I think over the years, maybe when the same government has been in place for a long time, some of those were weakened. And I think, I'm glad that the PH manifesto talks a lot about rebuilding the institutions, and I think that's very important. But having said that, if you look at the economic institutions that we have, Bank Negara, the GLCs, etc., I think they remain extremely robust, and I think that will certainly keep Malaysia strong as we go through this change.
Nazir, just one final question. Do you see this as a rite of passage for the country?
As a?
Rite of passage. It is a momentous occasion.
It is a momentous occasion. It's a huge opportunity, but we hope that the incoming government takes advantage of the opportunity that's in front of them.
A reflection of the maturity of the people?
And it's already I think the people have spoken, and I think the system has responded in the right way. Right? Not perfect, but in the right way. And I think over the next few days, it will get to the outcome that the Rakyat wanted. And thereafter, it really depends on the incoming government to do the right thing.